Connecting, and
Are we live?
we are live. That's your camera right there. So if you want to, stare people down that are watching
I'll
the
say
live
hi
stream,
for a moment as we.
that little black dot.
Yes, there we go. As we move back in. Hello, everybody. If you're joining us back online, for about the next. Well, we'll see. I slated 45 minutes, but please, we don't have to go that long if you don't want to talk that long. But I thought on the occasion of, although you could probably talk for all of it and then some, so maybe I'll have to cut you off. But it seemed fitting this fall, after the monumentous occasion of the inscription of the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks on the UNESCO World Heritage Site, that we might hear from two of the folks who have been working so hard for so long about the process, about where we are, about what comes next. And so, kind of without a lot of script, I'll let you decide, but we have Brad Lepper and Jeff Gill who have been working tirelessly on this for some time. And I know many others in this room have had a hand in this at some point or other. And since I didn't, I'm going to hand over the mic and let you all talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
we should have time for questions and answers too.
And some of us weren't doing it tirelessly. We got tired.
Did you take a nap in there somewhere? Yeah.
So it's really hard to know when to start. When does this story begin? And I don't know, who had the first idea that these sites should be World Heritage Sites. I know when it occurred to me, because I was hired by the Ohio History Connection in 1988 to be the curator and site archaeologist for the Newark Earthworks. I hadn't had that much background knowledge in Hopewell before then. I thought I was going to be a Paleo-Indian archaeologist. Who knew? So I started learning everything that I could from the literature about the Newark Earthworks, and came across these references to papers by these two guys named Ray Hively and Robert Horn at Earlham College about the archaeoastronomy. And I had a really hard time tracking those papers down. I had to go in person to the physics library at the Ohio State University to find them, and made photocopies and read them, and it's like, well, this is really interesting, and I understood 2/3 of it, and sort of put it on the back burner, but wow, if this is true, these sites are much more incredible than anybody's ever really imagined before. I started a lecture series. I invited people to come and give talks, and it wasn't until 1993 that I said, I'm going to call Ray and Bob and see if they'll come and give a talk. And I think that was the first time since their publication that an archaeologist had reached out to them to say, hey, this is kind of interesting. So they were intrigued, and they came and gave the talk, and we spent the rest of the afternoon talking. And after that, I understood a whole lot more about what their argument was. And it's this is really important. This is amazing stuff. And I think very soon after that, if not that same day, it's this is outstanding universal value. These should be World Heritage Sites. They're not just piles of dirt, as some people have said. And from there, we continued collaborating and talking to Hively and Horn, and they got reinterested in doing their research because of that, and started coming out with new papers. And I think without Hively and Horn's contribution to our understanding of the archaeoastronomy of the Hopewell Earthworks, not just Newark, because they expanded to the Chillicothe sites, there is no outstanding universal value. So I think that was the beginning, maybe one of the first dominoes to fall to say, yeah, these sites belong next to the pyramids, next to Cahokia, next to the Great Wall of China.
Well, I walk into this story in 1989, coming from Indiana, and I moved to the Newark area. I get involved with the Licking County Archaeology and Landmark Society, which had been a group with a guy named Paul Hope that had pushed OHC to have a site archaeologist. And so I got involved, met Brad, we got to know each other, and early in 1990, I was over at the Great Circle in his museum, and Brad is trying to tell me about this 18.6 year cycle of moonrises. And I did a lot of, oh, okay. I talk about it too much now, but at that point it was lunar cycle, horizon, moonrise, whatever. But once I got the basic idea of that absolute northernmost rise point and the alignment through the symmetry axis of the octagon, we said to each other, well, that would be a great way of getting the community involved and engaged to go out there when this next happens. Hey, Brad, according to that paper, when does this next happen? So we're sitting there, we're looking at the paper, and we're doing some math with a pencil in the back of an envelope, and it occurs to us there in the winter of 1990 that we had just missed it by 3 or 4 years. So we said, in 1990, okay, this is what we're going to do. A, we're going to be out there to watch it the next time it happens. And B, we're going to figure out how to get some other people to get out there on the site and watch it too, which was going to be a long way in the future, and who knows. But by 2004, 2005, maybe something will change.
And one of the things that changed was the country club. Was it 1999?
Yes.
That they decided to make a big change. And we first saw it on the front cover of the Newark Advocate. They had decided and had gotten some kind of agreements going that they were going to tear down their existing building and build one that was probably about 3 times the size. And it was an obscenity.
More than double the footprint, destroy more earthworks.
And we're looking at this going, this can't happen. And by this time we'd gotten Dick Shields involved. Dick Shields had heard me give talks about the Newark earthworks in the community, and he became a more fervent promoter of the earthworks than I had. He eventually starts the Newark Earthworks Center at the Ohio State University campus there in Newark, and brings in American Indian scholars, and he's the one that really opened that door really wide for us, which was very helpful. And when this announcement, and we had a meeting with Dick to talk about it, we just decided, we didn't think we could stop it, but we sure wanted to raise some hell. And we had, the Ohio History Connection at that time, the administration wasn't, I don't know how to say this, perhaps they had different priorities than they do now. And we got, in a week, a coalition of American Indians, archaeologists, historians, religious studies scholars, anybody that was any constituency of the Ohio History Connection mad and saying, what the hell? And I remember there was a public meeting, and our director then was Gary Ness, and he had all these people who he thought should be his constituency yelling at him. And he was like a deer in the headlights looking like, what did I do? These people are our partners. They're the people in the community that are we're working with. And it's like, no. And eventually they decided, the Ohio History Connection said, no, you can't tear your building down and build a new building. You can do renovations within the existing footprint. And it was a massive victory that we never thought we would have achieved.
And there's more detail within that story, but suffice it to say they did not expand, but now a whole lot of people were engaged and interested. And again, we're being very Newark-centric, but really that's where the spark is lit, and that's really where the prairie fire started burning from.
And it's entirely likely that if they had done that, it might not be World Heritage.
Further damage to the resource. But so that was stopped. The country club continued to tend to their own affairs. We're looking at ways to increase access. The club, now having lost their opportunity to expand their operation, starts actively moving to limit the public access we had had up to that point. And this is where, again, from my point of view, as not an official or a staff member of the Ohio History Connection, I will say, as a community member in Licking County, I could see, I could feel, I heard things start to change. A big step forward was the Ohio History Connection, and to me, this is a message for other sites, other people who are interested in World Heritage, maybe for another location or another situation. To me, a big part of this starts when the Ohio History Connection said, we need to have cultural resource management plans. Their first one was actually a historic site management plan, but they went into the CRMP process saying, we need these for all of our sites in Ohio, but we're going to start with the Newark earthworks. And I think they did it right, and they brought in people from the community, they brought in people from the Ohio Archaeological Council, they brought in a wide variety of constituencies, And to me, this is very recently, as we're in this last stage of receiving World Heritage listing for the sites, including Newark, the Mound Builders Country Club was at the table for every session of the CRMP planning. They were represented on each subcommittee. They contributed to the final document. And in that document, very much up front in the initial CRMP and in the appendixes, it said the Newark Earthworks will pursue World Heritage List status for these earthworks. Now at that point, it was kind of an unsigned check. It was a promissory note of sorts, but thanks, we think to Dick Shields bringing this up as an issue he'd become kind of engaged and enlivened by, because as an American history professor, he said, all my intro American history texts that I review to use for classes at Ohio State, they all open with Cahokia. How come no Newark? And so he goes to Cahokia and he says to them, how come you guys are in all the textbooks on page 1? And they said, World Heritage. So Dick came back and just became a World Heritage fanatic. And that's a big part, I think, of how it ends up becoming a part of the Cultural Resource Management Plan. We go through, we actually come to that time that Brad and I had said to each other, we're going to see that next moonrise. We're going to get the public there. That became a complicated series of events in 2004 and 2005 that we're just going to leave to one side, but the country club continued to develop a reputation as obstructionist and resisting to it. And it made us aware that we needed to expand the alliance and increase the number of people who were participating.
Yeah. And we did that how?
Well, in part because something happens in 2006. The trustee of the OAC, Al Tinetti, sends a letter to the Ohio History Connection about.
Oh, when the tentative list became open, and they announced that, yes, you can submit applications to be added to the tentative list.
Al, did you remember sending that email?
It's not that we wouldn't have found out about it without Al, but Al was the spark that like, he read the news and sent it to us. I still have that email, Al. And George Kane and the facilities was like, yes, we need to do this. I mean, there'd been really a sea change in the organization, that this was felt to be how we can better serve our constituency now. And so we had a meeting with George Kane, Dean Alexander, who was then superintendent of the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park, Franco Ruffini from the SHPO's office, and me, where we talked about how do we do this? What are our next steps? And we just started knocking the steps down and pursuing getting the draft finished. We did drafts for the Hopewell Culture Ceremonial Earthworks, pretty much as they're conceived and as they're named now, and then also Serpent Mound as an independent nomination. That one took a little more work. The first draft was rejected, and then we rewrote that. But yeah, then they got on the tentative list, which was an amazing first step. I mean, that means like you're on the short list.
And once we were on the tentative list, I remember coming into this building, actually looking for this guy, and George Kane, who was, what was George's title? Assistant Vice President?
Director of Historic Sites or something.
Director of Historic Sites. He said, oh, you're just in time. Follow me. And we go back into his office, and he's on a conference call with Phyllis Allen. Now, Phyllis Allen has been described in the World Heritage Celebration events these last couple weeks as kind of our coach. And she's kind of a Vince Lombardi. She's tough, and she pushes, and she challenged us at all the right points in all the right ways, I would say. But having just gotten onto the tentative list, part of the point of this conference call, as I remember it, as we're putting this together, is, okay, what happens next, and when do we get World Heritage? And as I recall it, I think roughly in March 2007, Phyllis said, this is going to take you people about 15 years. Can you sustain this effort across that span of time? George looked over at me and winked and leaned into the speakerphone and said to Phyllis, I think we can. But I want to make it clear, even back then they said, this is not going to be quick, it's not going to be simple, and the phrase that John Hancock, our partner with the Ancient Ohio Summer from the University of Cincinnati, if you see the Octagon Moonrise graphic that's on a lot of stuff, John helped to create that. John kept coming back to the fact that shortly after that, I don't know if it was Phyllis or Stephen, but one of them said, here's the thing, you have to hit a home run. And when they said hit a home run, they meant with the dossier.
And we did, as it turned out. We had, and Chief Glenna Wallace has said this on some of the videos that you may have already seen, that we were repeatedly told when we were in Riyadh that this was one of the best nominations that people had ever seen. It was awesome.
And he's mentioned Chief Glenna Wallace, and I just want to add a few words about our relationships with the tribes. And again, Ohio History Connection from 2003 to 2023 has really made a major shift in inviting, in being open to, and in working with the tribes with historic roots to the state of Ohio. Now, I think there was some intention going on early, here talking about 2006, but I want to go back again and give credit to Dick Shields of the Newark Earthworks Center, because with that interdisciplinary center, but based in Newark, he was bringing Native American scholars and other scholars of Native American subjects to both Newark and to Columbus. And part of the deal was, we'll bring you, we'll pay your expenses, and as a part of coming, you have to take a tour of the Newark Earthworks. And of course, most of them were totally fine with that. Well, Dick had gotten an author named John Sugden to come actually to Maine campus, and he had recently done a biography of Tecumseh, who is a chief of the Shawnee I suspect you all have heard of. Well, Chief Glenna Wallace of the Eastern Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma had been long a fan, her word, not mine, a fan of John Sugden. And so when she heard John Sugden was going to be in Ohio, and she had other professional reason to be in Ohio with her, I think her day job, not her chief job, she said, I'm going to go to that lecture and get a chance to talk to John Sugden. She comes to the lecture, and here's it sponsored by the Newark Earthworks Center. She's introduced to Dick. Dick introduced her to John, and it comes up that tomorrow we'll all be going to the Newark Earthworks for a tour. Would you like to come along? And she said yes, and again, I'm quoting Chief Glenna, she said, not because I was interested in earthworks, but because I thought it would give me a chance to hang with John Sugden for a while and maybe ask him a few more questions. So the lecture ends, everybody goes home, we meet the next day, and Chief Glenna walks with a group of us into the Octagon, and she just comes to a dead halt. And there were tears, and there was some anger, and there was some laughter, and there was a further tour, and I think we did get to the Great Circle. And to me, everything changed at that point, because Chief Glenna Wallace said, this site and public access to it's going to change. World Heritage? Okay, I'm for it. Tell me what it is. Chief Glenna really became a huge cheerleader, not only for this cause, but also to go back to the other tribes, many of them, most of them, that we relate to in Oklahoma, and she became our interpreter and our advocate, and ultimately our friend.
So, I guess maybe I could say a little bit about the trip to Riyadh.
Yes.
Because that was...
Because you took her with you.
Yeah, well, I think I went with her.
True.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. It wasn't the country I would have picked to, if we could have a World Heritage, event, but
Paris sounded good.
Yeah. But it was a fascinating cultural experience. It was such a land of contrasts. I think that's the word that keeps coming back to me, because there's these glittering palaces of shopping malls, including like a Victoria's Secret. And I've got a picture of like these two women in full burqas walking in front of Victoria's Secret, looking in the windows. I'm like, whoa. And then we went up in this giant tower to look at the city of Riyadh, and it stretched for miles, and it was huge, but it's in the middle of a desert. It's like, how does that even work? But anyway, and plus it was like 115 degrees every day, you know. So it was there were challenges, but I was there on a mission to see our sites inscribed on the World Heritage List, and so that's what I was focused on. And we could share that. Do you think we can share that video?
Yeah, I think so.
Because this is a video that if you haven't seen, it's the actual process of inscription. It takes, a lot of these sites that were being considered for nomination, the times, it took 45 minutes, an hour sometimes, as people were discussing issues. And our whole thing took like 4 minutes, because they were dealing with 2 years of nominations, because the previous year it was supposed to be in Russia, and then Russia invaded Ukraine, and nobody wanted to go to Russia anymore. So they put it off. And because they were dealing with 2 years full of nominations, they said, if you have comments or concerns about a nomination, feel free to raise them. But if you don't, because often people had these, it was customary to say, for friends of the country to say, oh, the United States has this wonderful nomination and it's honoring this indigenous culture, that's really wonderful. But they said, no, you can't have any sort of gratuitous, you know, nice things to say. You don't have bad things to say, don't say anything. And that's why this takes no time at all, because he says, are there any comments or concerns? Seeing none, bang, you're a World Heritage Site. And this is after the ICOMOS evaluation pre-recorded is shown, which talks about how wonderful the sites are. And hopefully we'll get to show that to you.
And as this is booting up, I just want to point out, for those of us who got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch this happen in Saudi Arabia here in Ohio, the morning session alone, there were 6 sites that were up. 2 of them were turned down. So it's not like this is a slam dunk. It's not like if you just get something pushed over the finish line, you'll get awarded. You still have to have the goods.
Yeah, make sure that the song works.
Well, that's
Cross
my
your
concern.
fingers. Yeah,
I was gonna
cross your
say,
fingers.
I don't know where the sound settings are, so.
No, not yet.
Conference. Oh, I wonder if it's output.
It starts that way before you get to it.
Oh, okay.
Hang on. I think I know what the issue is. Somewhere is my mouse. There we go. Maybe someday.
So a lot of settings.
Oh, I heard sound.
Yeah.
That was encouraging.
But that vision is expanding to include Ohio's incredible monumental earthworks built by ancient American Indians 2,000 years ago. We are beyond thrilled that after many years of effort from a broad group of partners, the Hopewell ceremonial earthworks have now been inscribed to the UNESCO World Heritage List and join more than 1,100 World Heritage sites on an international stage. These 8 earthworks are the 25th World Heritage Sites in the United States and the first in Ohio.
The World Heritage List comes out of the World Heritage Convention, which was adopted by UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, to recognize sites that are so important they deserve to be recognized by the world.
A World Heritage inscription recognizes the Hopewell ceremonial earthworks' outstanding universal value, on par with places like the Great Wall of China, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, and the Taj Mahal. The 8 sites in Licking, Ross, and
Uh-oh. Are we pushing the...
I was gonna say we're probably
Pushing the
maxing out
limits of the
our
hotspot.
hotspot.
Oh, wow.
Which might mean... Well, we can certainly push this video out. And if you have the other one, we can put it out, like,
Yeah.
put it on
Yeah, let's do
the
that.
media. All right, well, we tried.
All right. Well, let me bear with me 1 second here. Ooh, come on. Pause that. Ooh. All right. Who's?
Sorry about that. We'll
Lights.
push that out there.
Thank you.
Should we just ice this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We found the limits of our broadband capabilities. To
Warren counties are masterpieces.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to make sure that you're all oriented to this point that we're now at, is there are 24 United States World Heritage Sites, of which the Hopewell ceremonial earthworks are the 25th. They are both historical they're both cultural and natural. Sometimes they're combined. So the first one in like a 20-year gap in the United States participating in the World Heritage List was west of Hawaii, including Midway Atoll, and it's called Papahanaumokuakea. And one of the pleasures of getting to work with the World Heritage process is that I now know how to say Papahanaumokuakea.
I still don't.
But it's not that hard. You can pick it up. And that is both a natural and cultural site. That went on the World Heritage List in 2010. And then, as Brad mentioned, that they have a cycle they go through. And in fact, one of the debates in Riyadh was over Iran having a site submitted being rejected, and then asking, with the very, very testy support of the Russian Federation, well, so they get 2 next time, don't they? And boy, the chair could not have been clearer. That's not how the rules are written. You get the nominations you get on the timetable you've been given, and if they're turned down, you're welcome to resubmit, but you don't get a do-over. It's a very structured process. So there's about 1,300 sites currently around the world, and as I said, Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks became the 25th. But between the tentative list back in 2007 and actually getting inscribed in, I believe it was September 19th, 2023. Yeah. We'll probably have trouble forgetting that date. But I mean, if you think about it, let's see, 2007, 2023. So Phyllis was a little short. It wasn't 15 years. It was, how long, Jen Altman? 16, 17 years. And so we had to pull together this huge team effort from all over the state. And so I'm so thankful that Jen Altman got tapped to become the Major Domo of World Heritage. Was that your title? Cat herder of World Heritage. And honestly, I think every last one of us who gets a chance to make a presentation or just to talk to individuals about this, and people say, how did this happen? There's really only one word, and that's teamwork. It's not a Brad Lepper thing. It's not even a Hively and Horn thing. It's not an OAC thing. It's not a Jeff Gill thing. But we all each played our part. But honestly, I can't think of which part, looking back, and I'm looking at Jen to see if she'll confirm this, I can't think of any part that, well, if they had dropped out, it would have been fine. We needed everybody at the table, convention and visitors bureaus. I'd say politicians, but boy, a lot of politicians got really interested in this in just the last 6 months. Once they knew it was successful, they were for it all along. God bless them. But I do want to say something for Mark Johns in Heath, who really was from day one, and in the face of a lot of political flack in Licking County, he was a supporter. And I also have to say it, and I'm glad 2 weeks ago I got a chance to say it to him personally, Mike DeWine, as Attorney General, reviewed the consideration to make a petition for eminent domain to close out that lease, which was somewhat sneakily advanced in 1996 to the year 2078. And he reviewed the documents as a lawyer, as our Attorney General at the time, and said in 2018, we're taking this case and we're going to pursue it. And that has continued, and his support has continued as governor. Honestly, it would have been really easy for him to say, whoa, I don't want to touch this one. And without the Octagon, is it the same World Heritage nomination? Is it even a World Heritage nomination? I feel like I could make a case for it, but I'm very thankful we didn't have to.
Jeff, I seem to recall, actually I'm having a lot of flashbacks right now, because there was a lot.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. But you said the lease was extended to 2078. As I recall, I think the lease was supposed to end in 2034. Is that correct?
But there was a renewal period that we were actually acutely aware of. Yeah. I'm going to get in trouble here. Brad can kick me if I need to stop at some point. We had been, along with planning for Moonrise events in 2004, 2005, acutely aware that there was a provision in what we thought was the lease in 2004. And we were going to ask well, ask might not be the right word. We were going to push for a more public involvement, keeping in mind the Ohio History Connection is not a public institution, but a private institution which receives public funds. And then, of course, Map Builders Country Club is a private institution, entered into that lease. But we had plans to start pushing towards 2004 to challenge that lease being given that last extension. What happened as a result of the flap over the sudden announcement of the clubhouse expansion and then us pushing to stop it was the Ohio Historical Society, as it was then, was kind of forced to release the fact that in 1996, they had very quietly negotiated this huge extension. The reason being they needed the long mortgage, or they needed the long lease in order to get a mortgage, because they can't mortgage the property because they don't own it. So the extended lease became the basis for the money they borrowed to renovate their clubhouse, which is why in the court cases that we're involved in, Park National Bank is always sitting there next to Mount Builders Country Club, because whatever they get their share first. So that's kind of how that fell out.
Because I was working at SHPO at the time, and plus I was also, because I've always been involved heavily in the OAC, and at SHPO we were just seething, you know, and a lot of people at OHS at the time were just really upset that this lease got extended. I mean, there wasn't anything, you know, that Dr. Ness or the board at that time could have done to have, you know, calmed us down. We were pissed.
And I'll just say, looking at you before I hand the mic to anyone else, not looking at anybody else in the room, every Ohio Historical Society employee I knew in 2000 when that lease was released and it turned out they didn't know it, and they were all ticked too.
Well, and this is what created this incredible coalition that turned OHC around. The Native Americans, the archaeologists, historians, religious, all these people were outraged about this. And I mean, I feel sorry for Darren Ness. I mean, he was a good friend to me as director, but I was at a public meeting with him, and he was like a deer in the headlights, not understanding why his entire constituency had turned against him. It's like, I could explain it to you.
Jen, what did we miss?
What about next steps?
Yeah.
Hit a lot of it. I mean, there's all the ins and outs of navigating it through the process of the last few years. No, I think, well, there is that piece of how international politics
Right.
played into it in different ways, you know, over time. So
Yeah, I mean,
the Palestine issue, the UNESCO things issue, all of that.
there were each of the three counties, Ross, Licking, and I always forget our, Warren County. I almost said Lawrence, right, Warren County. There was county politics, state politics, politics with the tribes. The tribes have issues even amongst themselves. We found ourselves walking into that from time to time, and we had to navigate that carefully. And then all of a sudden we realized we're talking to people from the Department of State, and world politics play a role. And so in terms of next steps, you know, I was challenged on a question of international geopolitics and anti-Semitism in the course of giving my testimony about the eminent domain challenge. It would take me 20 minutes to explain it to you so that you'd understand it, but it's the kind of weirdness that has come out because, yes, UNESCO is a global agency. Yes, we are talking about the world stage. So, yes, this could have happened maybe a little sooner, but then Russia decided to invade Ukraine. What does that have to do with the work of Native Americans in Ohio 2,000 years ago? Well, for our efforts, it had quite a bit to do with it. It created another issue to navigate. So yeah, I hope you're all hearing that the teamwork and the time are key, but also the patience and persistence, because when we look back all the way back to 1890, as elements of this story start specifically, at least in preservation issues around the Newark earthworks, the big challenge is efforts have popped up from time to time every few decades. What was missing was sustained effort. And bringing together the coalition and creating the team and having folks working together Something we've talked about a lot this past week, 2 weeks ago now, I guess. This effort's gone on so long, some people who worked really hard with us in the first years of it have passed away. You know, when you realize how many people, you know, we started with 4. Oh, no, there's 5. And then, I mean, that's how long this effort is. But again, if your effort is very dependent on one person or just a couple, and one of them has a stroke or moves out of state, and all of a sudden, and again, looking at the last 100+ years of the history, that's kind of what's happened to other efforts that were aimed roughly in the same direction. The key to this is just passion and persistence. We kept it up over these last 17 years, and now we're there. Is there a last step to the eminent domain hearing? Yes, but it's the Court of Appeals, and since you're looking at 2 subpoenaed witnesses, we can't really say too much about that. But we're very confident it's really a procedural matter, and in the end, the court will do what the court will do. Serpent Mound, I don't believe there's a time frame on.
No.
There's not a time frame on it, and I don't think Brad wants me to ask him more questions about it. It is on the list, and also World Heritage has, along with Serpent Mound, I forget what we call it. Dayton Aviation Sites, which includes, you know, Huffman Prairie, as well as the bicycle shop and some other locations in the Dayton area. So there's more World Heritage List work to do. There's also more work that's ongoing about unifying signage and also interpretive plans between the 8 sites.
Yeah. What he said. I think we're done.
5, 10 more minutes. Are there any questions or anything else from the audience? When's the next moonrise?
Really soon.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm doing the math
next-
in my
next
head.
year.
Is it? Yeah.
And we don't want to talk about dates because we don't want people to show up, but we're hoping to have negotiated public access
Excellent.
for the next moonrise. We'll see.
I hope so. I missed the last one, but
A lot of people did.
it rained, right? Oh my gosh. Thank
Yep.
you both so much. Oh, do we have a question?
What, I just wanted to say, what an outstanding example
Truly.
of action archaeology. Taking political stands for the field and preservation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, truly amazing. Thank you both so much for your time today. Give a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I think Eric stepped out of the room. Of course, we need him to do a quick slide change because Al, you have some slides, right?
Just a few.
We will take we have a moment, so let's give about 5 minutes until Eric can come back and help us with this slide.
Without slides too, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, all right. Well then, yeah. If you need a moment to use the restroom, whatever, we'll give it. We started you at 1:15, so we'll give it about 5 minutes if you need to stand up and stretch or use the restroom. Terrific. Step out of the slide. Then, if you want, for the room acoustics, if you're not using slides, you can speak into the mic. It's on right now. So just, yeah. Hold it down. Just hold it on to come back on already.
This slide changer?
Yeah, but the batteries went
Dead.
out. Like, yeah, I
So
borrowed this
which
from my college.
control
So
forward?
when we get the slides up, yeah, it'll just be on that button. I borrowed this from my college yesterday, and they said they checked the batteries, but clearly
They don't have
something
one here?
wasn't.
Or is this just for you?
Oh no, this was mine. Like I brought this from my college.
So in May, is this whole thing going to work okay for us?
Yeah. So what I really want to do in May is see those cameras right
Yeah.
there and right there.
Yeah.
They have a whole integrated system here, and I want to work to be able to utilize those for our live
Okay.
streaming.
Well, we are live streaming this meeting?
Yeah, right now, like we're right now on that. Say hi to all the folks
Do we
out
know
there.
how many people there are?
10 or 12.
Okay.
Consistently throughout the day. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can utilize
We get to the business. Oh, you're right. We need to have a quorum.
I'll be around.
I know. We need to
Oh,
have
no.
23
Yep.
members.
We should ask Erica if said she was coming this afternoon. And
She's
then-
right there.
oh, yeah. Sorry. I was facing forward this whole time. She probably has the proxy.
All right, the mic is
This
live
is
on here
off.
now, too.
Is that okay?
Well, yeah, but that mic is separate from the mic here.
That's just
So
the
that
mic
does-
in the room.
That's the live stream mic that I have to turn on.
This one just so everybody can hear us in the room. This isn't, no, you can use this. It won't make feedback. This just makes it easier for everybody in this room to hear because it's such a dead space.
I like to walk around.
You can, yeah, you can walk in this whole mic and walk around on it. Do your spiel. So,
The last 2 weeks, that, no, the last 2 weeks I did it as my wife and so I was the sole person getting up in the middle of the night to take videos.
so are you still there?
It's sort of supposed to be. I'm supposed to have fun, so I have 5 minutes. Yeah. But somehow, like, it's a nice bag.
It's just about time. I think we can. All right. Step back into the screen. Hey, everybody. I think we're just about on track now to begin our last brief presentation from Alton, who's going to give us a brief preview of something really exciting that we have planned for the spring membership meeting. That I think we will be, giving more information in the coming months. But I want Al to give us a brief overview of it, so you can put it. We've got the date already. You can put it on your calendars and plan to be here. I think it's going to be great. So take it away, Al. Thank you.
So this is, I probably don't even need it. Either way is fine. I don't have any, if you can read that, it's good. I think there's enough light background. So this is something I've been thinking about for a while, and I talked with Beth about this. And so as chair of the Government Affairs Committee, for a long time, I've been seeing a lot of variation. I'll put it in the most polite way I can, variation in the way that the National Register criteria for evaluation is applied to archaeological resources. This is in cultural resource management projects, in compliance projects, regulatory things. So I thought it might be about time to maybe have a workshop for people who apply the National Register criteria of historic places to archaeological resources. So we decided as a board, to go ahead and pursue this, and we've been trying to get it. It was going to happen sometime this year, but it kept getting postponed. But it's going to happen next May, as you can see. So Friday, May 4th. If you're interested in this, put it on your calendar. It's going to be free and live and also remote, as this meeting is from here, this classroom, on May 3rd of next year. And we have to limit registration for live, for in-person, to 75 people. So there's about 35 or so here, but I don't expect to be that many, 75. But I just want to let you know that if you're interested and you want to come and do it in person, it's going to be limited to the first 75 people.
Hang on, our tech guy's coming. Thank you, Eric.
Is it arrow? Or
No, I think it's because I wasn't actually selected in the.
There.
So for those of you who may not be familiar with the National Register of Historic Places, it's the list of places, that's maintained by the National Park Service. And it's composed of sites, districts, buildings, structures, and objects that are historically significant and sufficiently intact, which is often called they have integrity. And it means that they're sufficiently intact so they can convey their significance through archaeological investigation and interpretation. And that these are properties that deserve to be preserved or otherwise considered in historic preservation activities at the local, state, and national level. So that's basically what the National Register is. It's the thing that drives cultural resource management work. When people go out and do surveys, they're, as Albert explained this morning, they're looking for properties that either do not or do meet the National Register criteria. As I was just mentioning, so the criteria are applied to archaeological resources in the regulatory context. That's the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106, which is a lot of what we do, or consultants do here in Ohio, and 110, which is basically for federal properties. And for Ohio Revised Code Section 149.53, because in Ohio there is somewhat of a counterpart to Section 106 in our state laws and regulations, and these pertain to state-sponsored public improvements. So agencies like the Ohio Department of Transportation, they go ahead and do archaeological investigations and apply the criteria, really regardless of whether the project is have federal oversight or state oversight. But there's some agencies that will only do it because they have to do it, or they cooperate under 149.53. These would be like investigations for solar farms, let's say. That's one example. Industrial scale solar farms. And also it's done in non-regulatory context. That's if somebody wants to nominate a property to the National Register of Historic Places. So there are very few archaeological sites that get individually nominated to the National Register of Historic Places anymore. When I first started working here in Ohio in 1978, I believe, and then I was working for the State Historic Preservation Office, there had been a lot of properties that were nominated to the National Register of Historic Places as individual properties outside of a regulatory context. And at the time, Ohio we had many, many sites listed. We were probably close to the top of all the states. Over the years, we've basically plummeted. There may have been one or two properties. I know Joni nominated one a long time ago. I nominated one when I was a long time ago. There might have been a shipwreck. I think that might have been the last one that was nominated. Maybe 10 years ago, but very few. But the thing I want to impress upon everybody is the criteria are the criteria. It's the same regardless of the context in which they are being applied. And the tentative schedule. So we're planning on starting probably around 9:30. This is tentative. This is going to be flexible. And then we're going to invite 4 presentations in the morning, basically 4 20-minute papers, kind of like we do now. And we want people to give us presentations on applying the National Register criteria to archaeological resources. And this can be based upon experience. This can be theoretical. We don't know. We're accepting abstracts, and we'll go over the abstracts, Beth and I and the board probably, and decide if we get more than 4, which ones we want to have presented in the morning. And I know we're going to have at least 2 already. And then we'll follow that with the business meeting, which is following us right now, after I'm done here. And then we're going to have a box lunch, and the lunch, the OAC board has agreed to provide the box lunch free to people who are registrants who are in person. Thank you very much, board. And then we're going to have the workshop in the afternoon. That's piggybacking on the presentations in the morning. The workshop is going to be, then we'll have SHPO is going to make a preservation, and they'll have some concluding remarks. The workshop will actually be done by the National Park Service. The National Register of Historic Places is a program of the National Register, of the National Park Service. And there is one archaeologist across the country who reviews all archaeological nominations to the National Register for the Park Service. This isn't compliance. I'm talking about if somebody writes an individual nomination and gets it through the state process, and then it goes to the Park Service, that person reviews the nomination. His name's Mike Roller. He's agreed to do this, and he can do it remotely or come here and do it. He's currently living in Indianapolis, so I think he wants to come here and do it in person. But this is what he sent me that he wants to focus on during the workshop. understanding what historic significance is and what integrity means under National Register Criterion D. And Criterion D is basically for places that have yielded or may be likely to yield information important in prehistory. This is often called like the archaeology criteria. He also wants to talk about levels of significance. There's local significance, state significance, and national significance, and how that all goes into play to when you're applying the criteria. Also wants to talk about the appropriate level of survey documentation for documenting the eligibility of archaeological sites. And I'll say this right now. I'll just say this: that most of the time, when you're in a compliance situation, you're not actually nominating a property to the National Register. It's basically a determination of eligibility, and that eligibility determination is something that the agency, the federal agency or state agency that's involved, and the State Historic Preservation Office will basically agree on. Either it's not eligible or it is eligible, and if they disagree, then it goes to the National Park Service, and they will eventually decide whether it is or is. He also wants to discuss using multi-stranded evidence to document National Register eligibility, and this is one of the things I think if you were here this morning, you heard Albert talk about, and I think some of this is going to be presented again at the workshop in the morning, such as using non-invasive geophysical survey methods. I didn't suggest to him that, because I'm a big advocate for geophysical survey, but he came out with that himself, so that wasn't my suggestion. Also, the significance and integrity issues for archaeological districts. So there are sites, which might be one site, but if there's an area that has multiple sites, that's called a district. So that's what that means. There's some considerations in there that are different than just an individual site. There's also, and I asked him not to spend a lot of time on this, but he's going to address it, eligibility of archaeological resources under the other three National Register criteria, A, B, and C. So he's going to discuss some of that. And then the last one, which I'm glad he's going to be talking about, because I think it's an issue we need to deal with, is the eligibility of more modern or recent archaeological resources under Criterion D. So that's basically what the Park Service is going to focus on. I'm not sure what SHPO is going to focus on, but we're having a meeting, Beth and I think on November 8th with SHPO to talk about how we're going to market this, et cetera. Now, this will be marketed not just to OAC members. This is going to be marketed outside, beyond Ohio, to archaeological consultants, to SHPOs, to agencies, to clients, like people who are building solar farms, et cetera. It's going to be marketed to a lot of people because we can accommodate 75 people here, and then it could be a bunch of other people participating remotely. So there'll be hopefully quite a few people attending. So if you want to submit an abstract, please get it to me or Beth by April 5th of next year, and we'll let you know whether your presentation's been accepted or not. And really, that's it. That's really all I have to say.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm excited. And it just dawned on me, too, we might be able to talk to both the registered professional archaeologists and the SAA that offer continuing education as a way to, these things might count as some of that continuing education too. It just dawned on me, I just wrote it in my notebook, so we'll come back to that one too.
Actually, there is the SAA did a workshop, a seminar, a 2-hour workshop. I believe you had to pay for it, even if you're an SAA member, $99, and it's still available up on their website if you want to go and listen to it. It was very good. It was done by 2 archaeologists from New South Associates out of Georgia, and I participated in that, and that's kind of got my juice flowing for this too. So.
Yep, we'll look forward to that in the spring. So that concludes our presentation portion of the meeting. So we're going to end the live stream in just a moment, and we'll transition over to our business meeting that you all can attend, but you cannot vote in unless you are a member. So with that, I'd like to conclude this portion of it, sign off online, and give us a few minutes to wrap this all up, turn over, and then we will